Part 1. Seawall. Written by Simon Stevens. Performed by Tom Sturridge.
She had us, both of us, absolutely round her finger. Fundamentally, she achieved this through the way that she looked at us. It shouldn't have been a surprise that the way she moved her head to one side should leave me basically on my knees, or more akin, I should say, to a slightly tepid pool of just water. But what was more surprising was the effect it had on him. Anything she wanted, he gave to her. Anything she demanded, he agreed to, and he agreed to everything with this same little smile on his face. A grown man with the smile of a 4-year-old boy. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't have agreed to the same and more in his position, but it just seemed in some way more, surprising coming from him. He wasn't that kind of man. He was a soldier. And when I say was, I mean he used to be. Between 1968 and 1984, he was a soldier in the British infantry. He reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. That is my impression of him. He did 5 tours of Northern Ireland. And then this was when, doing a tour of Northern Ireland was more than just a few games of pool and a chat with some kids outside a fish and chip shop. Like some of the photographs he took. He used to have a Polaroid camera. And some of the things, after he had a few drinks, he'd get out of his box to show me. You would not have thought they were of Northern Ireland. There was something about them that I found in some way frightening. He always refused to talk about the Falklands War. He never mentioned it. I asked him about it one time and his face turned within the matter of a few seconds, literally grey. A slate grey. And even when he eventually retired from the army, he retrained as a maths teacher, for fuck's sake. I mean, I would have liked to have seen him teach. I can imagine what kind of teacher he was. I don't think he would have worn many pairs of corduroy trousers. I don't think he would have shared too many coffees with his favourite pupils. Come and play with me. Read me a story. Can I sit on your lap? Where's Grandpa? There he is. Not his kind of scene, But he did it with her. The first thing I learned about photography, I learned when I was a kid. If you're taking a portrait photograph, if you possibly can, then take it from below the subject. It renders the subject. Actually, oddly, what it does is it renders them not more heroic, not more godlike. Oddly, it renders them more human. And if you can take it in natural light, if you can capture the way the light falls at the start of or at the end of the day especially, then it can be... He used to try and convince me that the existence of, the discovery of, the understanding of the relevance and possible uses of the irrational number that's commonly and internationally and historically known as pi, that is, to 5 decimal places, the number 3.14159, is irrevocable proof of the existence of God. It's just so illogical, he told us, that it could ever work. That must just prove that there's something more than us. And it's so incredible that we can discover it. That proves something. I think he's wrong. I told him, I think you're wrong. I told him, for someone so palpably intelligent, Arthur, sometimes you think like your head's full of wool. He liked me. He never got too cross. We talked about beer together. He watched an unusual amount of tennis. Everything was tennis with him. His conversation was peppered with tennis metaphors. Sometimes I watch tennis with him, but I never liked it much. Is it a terrible thing to say that sometimes the company of men is kind of, in some way, comforting. And I didn't mean that to sound, I don't mean anything other than he had a house in the eastern suburbs of Toulon, in a town called Carqueiranne, in the south of fucking France, for fuck's sake. When I go there with Helen for the first time, we drive in her car, and she's a kind of mix between being a bit embarrassed because, ostensibly, at least at the time, we are kind of, socialists, and just being really fucking proud because her dad has a house in the south of France, and she's taking me there, and she's paying for the ferry because I'm broke. And she keeps going on about how odd he is, but how she has a feeling that she thinks I'll like him. And I do. She says that that's one of the things that she likes about me. I like people. People like me. They think I'm gentle. I had absolutely no idea that people thought I was gentle. And she says she really likes this bit. This bit on the top of my arm is one of the best bits of a man, she says, which is a phrase that just about sends me completely insane with love for her and her nose and her smile and everything. Lucy was an emergency cesarean, and when Helen was in labour, there was a moment where I thought she could have died. And I'm a little bit embarrassed now because I had to go to the toilets to change into my, what are they called? Scrubs. Is it? I had to change into my scrubs, and when I did have a bit of a cry. And when I did ask God, who I don't fucking think is even there in the first place, to make sure that Helen was all right. I said, we can survive if we lose the baby, but I don't think I could make it if she went and died on me. Now, it's like talking to a photograph or the mirror. It has the same effect, which is not to discount it completely, but that's not God. The next time I go to his house, after we've been going out now for 2 years, he takes me diving. He's become a big fan of scuba diving, which may be a surprising character development in a man of his age, but he's a surprising man. Between Saint-Tropez and the Ile de Porquerolles, there are, he says, actual shipwrecks you can actually dive on. Would I like to come? I have never worn a wetsuit before, and it takes me longer to get into than I hoped, and it makes me feel like a bit of a dick. He tells me he's going to take me to the seawall. I ask him the what? He says, the sea wall. Now, this makes no sense to me at all. There's a wall in the sea. It drops down. Hundreds of feet. I had absolutely no idea the bed of the sea was built like that. I thought it was a gradual slope. We swim out, and actually, once you're inside the water, it is a kind of magic. He brought us these little bags with bits of bread in to feed the fish, and you hold them upside down to swim with so you don't lose the bread because it naturally floats upwards. And he takes us to the wall, and swimming there with the sun, even as bright as it is above us, and it's a bright day, even then, the darkness of the fall that the wall in the sea reveals is as terrifying as anything that I've seen. We go down, we open up our bags. Hundreds of fish come out from everywhere and eat our bread. You get back to the surface, and of course, the idea that there wasn't a seawall down there in the first place is a bit embarrassing, frankly. I mean, what did I think the seabed was actually made of? When she was giving birth to Lucy, the midwife calls to me, "Daddy, do you want to see your baby born?" And they built a little tent, and I look over the edge of the tent, and I'm one of those people who I never know where to look when people point things out to me. So, like, I'm a kid and I'm driving along, and Mum says, "Look, a pigeon," or "Look, a plane," and I don't have the faintest idea what to look at. I just smile and nod dumbly and say, yeah. But I'm completely lying. And this is a bit like that. Mainly, I see the yellow of the inside of her stomach. Once you've seen the inside of somebody's stomach, I think your relationship with that person probably then moves to, a new level. I love her completely. With every bone and bit of skin of me. And it's been very rare the times in our relationship where she's cried and I've comforted her. I am fucking crying all the fucking time. I can't watch an episode of ER without just being a wreck. I cry at ground force when the person comes back and they've had their garden done up as a surprise. We go there to his house for our holidays every year. We did used to drive 3 years straight. We drove all the way down from London without stopping. We took it in turns driving. We kind of promised to share the navigating, but neither of us needed any help. We did it fine. Then when Lucy was born, we started flying there though, because the driving's not fair on a baby, and he'd buy us the tickets. You can get flights to Carcassonne for dead cheap, but he'd pay for us to fly into Nice, and he'd hire us a car when we got there. The first time he sees her, she is 6 months old, and he takes her by surprise a bit. He looms over from behind her, and he's wearing his glasses, these big old glasses, and he's a very, very tall man, and he takes her by surprise, and she screams like living shit. Believe me, it took her 3 days to recover from that, but she did. And then she started with the shuffling across the floor to reach him and putting her hands up and making these little noises, which basically mean, "Put me on your lap and read me a story now, you funny old fucker. I don't care if you're meant to be weird. I don't care if you're meant to be scary. I don't care what anybody fucking thinks about you. I want a story and I want it now." Who could resist that? She starts wearing cardigans, and that is me done for. One time, I say to him, if there's a God, is he a man? And the question takes him by surprise for a bit, but after a while, he says that yes, he thinks in the end, God is probably a man. So I say to him, well, what does he look like? Does he have a beard? Does he wear robes? Does he have long white hair? And he says to me, the thing about God is that whatever I think he is, well, he'll be the absolute opposite to that. And whatever I think he's least likely to be like, then that's what he'll be. So I ask him if he means God looks a bit like Danny DeVito, and he tells me not to be so bloody silly. So I say to him, if you can't tell me what he looks like, if you don't know what he looks like, if he doesn't look like anything, then how do you know he is anything? Other than just an idea. Just something you made up. She's 8. We've been going every year. We've talked for years about having a second child, but every time we talk about it, we think about Lucy, and we just think, you know what? We're very happy. We just want her. She is clever. She's funny. She's very, very determined. She's Helen's sidekick. She's my sweetheart. They make little wisecracks about me. The two of them stand there sizing me up. But I know if they ever push it too far, she'll come running over to me and she'll put her arms around me, because the idea of properly making me sad makes her feel a little bit sick. in the 8 years that she's been born, I fucked a lot of things up. But somehow, by the skin of my teeth, managed to come out largely unscathed. And me and Helen, we're doing okay. We have little routines and stuff, like about the dishwasher or the shopping or the cooking, because I really like to cook for her, but compared to her, I'm shit at it. So when she cooks, it's probably a treat. We have all these routines, but it's like we fucking love them rather than finding them, restricting. Sometimes when you swim in the sea, the force of the waves can crash right against you. Can knock you over. I mean, there have been times in my life where just trying to get out of the sea, I've been knocked over. 2 summers ago this happened, and I cracked my coccyx against a stone on the shore's edge and flailed about like some kind of huge seal. I was, at that moment, the mathematical direct polar opposite of Daniel Craig. It doesn't get like that normally where he is. Like, normally the sea's warm there, which is quite an unusual feeling for me, but every year there's the Mistral. A high-pressure system grips the plateau of the Massif Central, and a low-pressure area squats above the Mediterranean, and the winds can blow up to 100 miles per hour. It's completely... The rain pours, and when it's like that, or in the hours just before that, that's almost my favourite time to go and swim. I swim out, and I always swim as far as I think is safe, and then turn, swim another 10 strokes, then stop and swim back. Now, sometimes you think the tide's caught you. You panic because you think you're not moving. You are. You just need to turn on your back, collect your breathing, kick slowly. You're moving. I ask him, where is he? He says, who? I say, God. Where is he? Is he in the sky? Because that's where people used to think he was, like children and medieval people. Is he on the edge of our solar system? Is he on the edge of our galaxy? Because every time we think we've located where he must be, then we find out something else and we realize that God can't be there. So is he 15 billion light years away on the very edges of the universe, in the parts of the universe that take on the form of the time of the Big Bang, that have that kind of density? Is he there? Is that where he is? And he says, oh, we don't know everything, Alex. There are some things we don't know. There are things we can't explain. I tell him, now. He says, what? I say that we can't explain them now, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a reason. It just illustrates the gaps in our knowledge. It doesn't mean that we won't be able to explain them one day, because I think that we will. I want to acknowledge something, and it's embarrassing because I know that it's something that you would have noticed. There is a hole running through the center of my stomach. I mean, mostly people choose not to talk about it, but some people tell me that they're sorry, but that yes, they can see my hole. What's that, Alex? They say. You appear to have a great big hole running right through the middle of you. I started doing okay. It sounds stupid, but I got a contract with British home stores, taking the photographs for their catalogues and for their websites, the menswear, the women's wear, the back-to-school stuff, the homeware. I made so much money from taking photographs of cushions and saucepans and digital alarm clocks, I can barely believe it myself. So, 5 weeks ago, just before we go, just before all the packing and the frantic stuff about what are we going to take. Helen's buying some stuff to take with us. She's got Lucy all of her new stuff, her dresses and her swimming things and her books and toys for the flight. She got me some sunglasses, which were properly sick. Seriously. Very Reservoir Dogs. And she asked me to come to the bedroom because there's something she wants to show me. And I get there and she's wearing this dress. It's a blue dress with this dropped back. And she asked me to tell her what I think. And I swear, for about 30 seconds, I couldn't speak. She looked. And the idea that I was married to her. And we had our girl. And this was our life. There's a man in the market in Port Grimaud that we visit on our second day, and he sells us a case of claret for the equivalent of about 15 quid. And it is like heaven. We drink 2 bottles on our second night there. The next day, Helen has to go to the supermarket because we need to get some bread, some shampoo for Lucy, and I need some athlete's foot cream. And they have these little yogurts you can get, these little pots of vanilla-flavoured yogurt that you can't get in Britain. She wants to get some cheese. It is fun getting it from the market, but as it goes, it's a proper rip-off. So she wants to go to the supermarket, which is where most of the French people go anyway. So me and Arthur go down with Lucy down to the sea. Now, there's a bay just near his house, and round the corner from the bay, there's a little cove that you can climb onto. And when the bay's busy, you can go to this cove, which is actually nearer his house, and it's more secluded. It's very quiet, and it's lovely. And we talk about it, and we decide to go there. She can go into this world. Did you ever know any kids like that? When she thinks nobody's looking, she can start off just going further and further into her imagination, like playing games all by herself. Actually, what she's really doing is she's talking to herself, which some people might find a bit disconcerting, but I just love to watch her. He says to me, one time he looks at me and he says he is in the feeling of water. Sometimes there's the shape of the roll of land. He's in the way some people move. He's in the light falling over a city at the start of an evening. He's in the space between 2 numbers. Do you want to know what the cruelest thing I ever did to anybody else was? I'll tell you. I've started getting into detective fiction. I've got a friend who goes to St Mary's University, and he said to me, Alex, all fiction is detective fiction. He's completely wrong. Jane Austen is not detective fiction. Franz Kafka is not detective fiction. Detective fiction is detective fiction. James Elroy. Arthur goes for a swim. I'm reading L.A. Noire, the bit where the cop and the killer meet in the deserted car park at midnight with the lights out, neither knowing whether the other one's there. Lucy is kind of being a Power Ranger. The sun's gorgeous. I've got my shades on, it's so bright. After about 15 minutes, he comes back, and the water's amazing, he says. He dries off, and I notice his feet The skin on his feet is unusually battered and cracked. It's one of the moments that you kind of rumble. He's a little old. And he tells me that I can go for a swim. And I do. And the water is amazing. I wade out past the first bank and I get past all the seaweed and I swim out and out and out and out and out around the corner of the bay. And the light, at that time of day, the light on the Mediterranean is, and the sea is warm. I turn around and I am about 20 yards out, and the sky is this huge blue curve. I can see the swimmers around the corner of the bay. I can see the houses on top of the cove. I can see his house. I can see Arthur sitting reading. He's reading some history of China. He's really into it. His towel draped over his legs, the water dripping onto his book. I can see all of that with real detail from here. And I can see Lucy playing behind him, running about a bit, just being a Power Ranger. And I can watch them as she does a little bit of a jump. And it's odd because he's so into his book that he doesn't notice that she loses her footing in the sand and the gravel of the rock, and she slips and stumbles. And she's quite close to a little edge of one of the rocks there, and what she does is she tries to correct her balance. But in trying to correct the balance of her weight, she actually puts more weight on her back foot that slips out from underneath her. And it's weird to look at because she does fall off the edge of this 6-foot-high cliff on the rocks, and she falls backwards and cracks her head on some rocks that are jutting out at the bottom of the cliff. Now, I can see it all clearly, but I can't really hear anything, and it's weird watching with no sound. Like, if the sound's off on the telly, it's always a bit strange. It takes me a while to register before I turn and swim back to the shore. And I'm not thinking, so I start swimming faster, which is stupid because I'm panicking, and when you panic, you can't really breathe properly. So I have to tell myself, concentrate on your breathing. And I can kind of watch him between strokes, and he's thrown down his book, and he's jumped off the cliff, and there is another couple there that I didn't notice before who've stopped their sunbathing and run over to where she is. And I notice him pick her up. He's torn between running back to the house to call an ambulance and waiting for me, but I get there in enough time for him not to have to worry about this for too long. I go to her. I take her from him. There is, which is surprising to me, is there is a handful of blood in her hair. It's thick and it's matted, and her hair is all chewed up by it. I think I read somewhere, or maybe somebody told me, that it is a process. The injury causes the death of brain cells, and so signals are no longer sent to the lungs, and bit by bit, the machine closes down. Her blood sticks to my hands. I carry her up the path of the cove and I haven't bothered getting dried. And people are looking at me, stopping still in their tracks and talking to me in French. And I'm aware that I'm kind of not crying. I look like... fuck, I don't know. I go back into the house with her, and as I'm getting through the sliding glass doors, I bang her head against the wall. And I'm talking to her, which is stupid, and I tell her that I'm sorry for hitting her head. But there is a part of me that's thinking, well, fuck it now. What does it fucking matter now? I may as well drag her by a fucking ankle. This bit of meat. This bit of meat and air. I remember being a bit astonished because one of the ambulance men spoke English, quite good English. He'd lived in Southampton, and I couldn't help thinking, why the fuck did you live in Southampton of all places? The sound of her opening the door with her bags filled with yogurt and shampoo and bread and cheese takes me completely by surprise. She looks at me across his house. She's wearing sunglasses to protect her against the light. He's sitting on his sofa. He's still wrapped in his towel. He's a man that is completely broken. He's a shattered form, the little noises he makes. I leant over the check-in at Nice, and we'd been taken to the front of the queue, and we'd actually been given an upgrade. And while the woman there was sorting all this out, I looked over her at a sheet that she was checking off on her desk, and on it there was a list of the passengers and the crew and the baggage. And at the end of the list it read, human remains, which was a bit. We're sitting there, the three of us, in the departure lounge, and we can't really touch one another. We can't look at each other or at anybody else. And I turned to him, and this is the cruelest thing I ever did to anybody else. And don't forget, this is a man I've known him for 10 years, and I do. I love him. I look at him and I say to him, you get back to the city, of course, and the noise of the place, the dirt and the colour and the roar of it. What I can't do for now at least is work. There's a lie at the heart of photography that I've always cherished. When you take a photograph, what you do is you freeze something that's actually alive. And to do this properly, you need more than anything to believe in life. There's a child out there laughing. And in his laugh, there's absolutely no joy or humour. Warning, this vehicle is reversing. I have a complete and total inability to cry. You see people when they say to you that they can't imagine not believing in anything because it would just be too depressing. I think there's something sick about that. the level of cowardice in that is just unbearable to me. I've been home for 3 weeks now. If this can happen, anything can happen. This morning there was this couple outside and they were arguing in the street, and it looked like they were deliberately trying to copy characters out of soap operas in the way that they argued. The misery and the emptiness and the vacuous fucking shitness of their lives is so considerable that the proximity to the behaviour of soap characters acts as some kind of consolation. Helen moves around the house. I'm holding my entire head together. The skin and the shell of me. I'm falling absolutely inside myself. But you can hear that. You can hear the in my. Just because we don't know, it doesn't mean that we won't know. We just don't know yet, but I think one day we will. I think we will.